I only have 3 questions. 3 questions are answered.
Nothing's changed.
No, it's the updated version.
What am I doing? When do I do it?
That's true.
Okay, welcome to everyone. It is so awesome to see such a great group. Glad you were able to come tonight. Sorry for the mix-up. I'm not quite sure what happened there. We had it reserved since August, but apparently something went wrong in the scheduling office. So, first person I'm going to introduce to you, because I think a lot of you may not know her in person, is Amy Christensen. She is our new Director of Placement and Licensure. So she is the replacement for Nicole. So if you remember working with Nicole before, hi. Yes. If you want to grab a chair, so you can grab something from out there and just pull one in. And so as we go through, Amy is the one that, your student teaching evals will go back to her. She will be posting your grade once they're all in, things like that. So, and she's also getting trained in as the licensure officer, so once you're done with student teaching, she'll be the one taking care of that as well for you. So, want to make sure you knew the face that went with the name as we go through all that. I also wanted to make sure that you remember that we have pretty much everything you should ever need that we can help you with for student teaching posted under D2L, and it's this long, it has all the student teaching numbers together. It's probably the only thing in your D2L. And so under this section, I just posted recently the new student teaching handbook. And then if you go in the content area, that's really, there's only a couple of things that have been filled here. But all the materials from this afternoon's session are there. And then Ashley is also taking care of videotaping. We're going to videotape this for those who couldn't make it, but also for those of you that are here. Sometimes you're like, what did she tell me? I know it was in there. You can go back and see it and watch it again and follow along. You'll have the PowerPoint as well, and so you can rewind me and go back and say, what did she talk about on that part? So you'll have that. So where I'm at, one of the links here, under the edTPA, there's some sub-modules, and this one is the materials from today's support session. So that's where things are. And so I'm going to take you next. Oh, one more real quick thing. I've posted a couple things recently, just as I've been coming across them. Right up here at the top, student teaching support materials. I've been coming across a few good things lately. So there's some links there, 3 things I wished I'd known about classroom management as a new teacher, developing your professional learning network, and some culturally responsive classroom management resources. So some things that are pretty recent and might be useful to you. So I'm just kind of posting those things as they're there. You can take a look and see if there's anything that you might want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started, and we'll take you through the presentation. And feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll try and get them answered. So today is entirely TPA. We'll answer student teaching related questions tomorrow. Okay? So today that's the focus. She's down there. Okay. So come on board. Okay. So hopefully you've seen this graphic. Hopefully you've been into live text and gotten your handbook. Anybody who doesn't have their handbook yet, so we want to run through how to get that if you don't know for sure how to do that. Everybody's okay with that? You're not so sure? The directions for it are posted in that D2L site, step by step. Same place you go for your student teaching portfolio. It's under documents, you hit new, and all the TPA handbooks are in there. And they are new handbooks. So even though you did them for pre-student teaching last spring, they have changed yet again, not drastically, but a little. And so you need to be using the new handbook and the new requirements in there. So make sure you do read it through carefully, because it isn't the same. Kind of the main things are all the same that are in there. There's still 15 rubrics. They're divided into the 3 tasks. So task 1 is planning, task 2 is instruction, class 3 is the assessment. Academic language is woven all the way through. And in particular, a little bit of the assessment piece is now woven all the way through. One of the things they changed for this fall's handbooks is that when you're going to have that task that you're going to be collecting student work from for task 3, they want you to include a blank copy of that with your lesson plans when you upload this thing initially. Go ahead and grab a chair out there and bring it in. We're just moved. And so that is one of those things that's different this time. It wasn't there last year. when people, did their TPA, but now they want to see, as you're planning your instruction, have you planned the assessment as well? Okay? So you upload a blank copy of the assessment, whatever it is, along with your lesson plans. So just the one that you're going to use to monitor your class at the end. So not every lesson, but just the one task that you're going to do. Also tied within all of them, that academic language piece. The other piece that's probably more of a difference now is they actually want you to be assessing that academic language. So when you identify it in your lesson plans, we've always been really good at that at SMSU. We know what the academic language is, pretty good at identifying, here's what I'll do about it. Rarely did we go back and see, did they actually learn the academic language? So in your assessment, they do want to see, how do you know if the students know that academic language? So whether there's a question on there, or it can also be in your videotape. If they can see it in your video where you're asking students, so what did this word mean and how do we use it? And there's something in your video that shows the academic language, that can count for that. But they want to see it either in the video or in the assessment that you do. And probably the last piece I would say about looking at the whole thing together, when you're designing that assessment, they really want to see, back to your planning, where is that assessment back to, which standards was it identifying, and which of your lesson objectives. When you pick those content objectives that are in there, they want those tied to specific questions. So if you can kind of think of a grid, I've got maybe a 5-question quiz or whatever you're doing, and it's tied to this standard and Monday's learning objective. And the second question's tied to Wednesday's learning objective, and the third question's tied to Tuesday's, and here's an academic language question. If you just kind of have something along the side for your own notes, the one you give them, the blank one, that here's where it's mapping back to, they want to know that you are assessing the things that you taught them, and that it's aligned to your goals, it's aligned to the standards. Does that make some sense, hopefully? So it's like, yeah, you probably knew that, and it's probably there, but you want to make it crystal clear to the person scoring that, yes, you were aware of what you're assessing here, and that's where you're tying it back to. Okay? So that's really the main changes. There haven't been a lot of other changes. Some of it's in language. They're trying to make it easier to read. They're getting better at that. It's improving. But most of that's the main things that have changed. Okay, so this is those 3 tasks. Task 1, you're going to be asked to look at the social context, the instructional context. So going back to, what's the student's prior knowledge? What do they know about this topic? And how are you going to know that? Where are you going to get that information from? Somebody said one. Mentor teacher is going to be able to tell you, right? What have the kids had on this before? Who else or where else might you look to find out what their prior knowledge is on this?
Prior standards.
In your standards, if you go back to the year before, yeah, and you should know, here's what they should have mastered at that level. They should have at least heard about it. You can also bring in any social community kinds of things. I'm in a farming community. Kids know a lot about, something that we're talking about in science, maybe growing plants. Things like that. They like it if you tie in, kind of the personal and social assets kinds of things. But they do want you to talk about the prior learning. How do you know where to start your teaching if you haven't done some background knowledge on that?
And Rhonda, that SCI math site is pretty good too. I know that you shared that with your secondary math, and I shared it with the secondary or the elementary.
Yep, if you're doing the math one, that the frameworks site would be very helpful on that. They want your lesson plans. You do need to have a minimum of 2 lesson plans. We had a couple people last year that thought they could do a 1 lesson plan to cover 2 or 3 days. It doesn't fit the Pearson model, so you need to have at least 2 lesson plans in there. They're actually going to be looking for 3 to 5, and especially elementary. They really go by time frame. They say 3 to 5, meaning hours worth of instruction, essentially. So I'll pick on Alex because he's in a 4-period day school, 1.5 hour blocks. So you could get by with 2 lesson plans if you wanted to, because you're going to cover 3 hours of instruction. That would be the minimum. But if you're elementary and your lessons might really only be 30, 40 minutes, they're going to want at least 5. So they want a minimum of a couple hours or better of instructional time. The things that you'll be uploading for that, you'll complete the commentary, you'll upload your lesson plans, any instructional materials. So what that means is if you're using some handouts that are not maybe from your text necessarily, any extra materials, they allow you to add and check your handbook because it's different for different content handbooks, but roughly 5 pages or so you can add. So if it's your teacher edition, do not scan in copies of the teacher edition, and here's what they don't want to see that, okay? You just tell them in the commentary, this is the edition I'm using, that's fine. But if there's things outside of your textbook that you're bringing in and showing, they do want to see that. So now, I'll pick on Brandon or Alex, because I know they're secondary. Brandon, he's secondary history. He might very well have a PowerPoint that goes along with his lesson. One of the crazy features of Pearson's platform is they don't take PowerPoint. So, what you need to do if you're going to use that as an instructional material is go under the Save As and save it as a PDF. They will take that, and you can turn anything into a PDF in that way, but they will not let you upload a PowerPoint. You also cannot upload a smart notebook software. So, those you can also turn into PDF, but if you're using Smart Notebook, what you do is you go under File to Export As, and then Export as a PDF. So it's not the Save As, it's Export As. So then you can turn it into that and be able to upload it accordingly. Let's see, so that takes care of what's going to be in Task 1. They mentioned here student assignments. That's what they mean by that assessment piece. What are you going to give them as an assignment or some kind of an assessment? Task 2, you need your video clips, and then the commentary. There's a commentary for all three of them. And then Task 3, you're going to do an analysis of what the whole class did. So tied back to that, you had that assessment, you know which learning goals you're going through. That one is going to be, you want to have some kind of a rubric, and that needs to get uploaded in Task 3. How are you going to score that? To say, you know, who did what, how they did on this thing. So it isn't just right or wrong necessarily for each question. So think back to your math classes, me being a math teacher, we gave partial credit. How would you do that on your assessment? Is there some partial credit along the way? Because really what you're looking for, and it can be right or wrong, but what you're looking for, that analysis of the whole class, they want to know what kinds of errors did you see? Are there some patterns of errors in the class so that you know what you need to go back and fix and where the problems might be? You're going to look at 3 target students. Ideally, and they tell you in the handbook, they want this to be 1 student on an IEP, 1 student who's an English language learner, and 1 student who's a gifted and talented. How many of you have all 3 of those in your classroom? Yeah, you might, maybe half of you, but ideally, you know, odds are you don't. So if you don't have those 3 areas, maybe you have none of those 3. I've had people with that too. They're in an honors class and they don't have any of those. You choose a lower achieving, an average, and a high achieving. What they want to see is differences in learning ability. So if you don't have the specifics they're asking for in the handbook, just try to pick the 3 levels. What you're going to do with those 3 students is talk about your feedback to those students. They want to see it on the student work samples that you'll scan in. And they also want you to talk about in the commentary, what are your next steps for those students? If you've got a kid who's really struggling in your class, and you've gone through what they know, well, what are you going to do now? And that's really what the commentary is about for all of them. It's like, what are your next steps? Now that you know how your students did, where do you go from here? You know, you just leave it. There's some stuff they didn't get. Okay, they're done. That's not a good answer. But what are you going to do? You know, if there's maybe 5 kids who really struggled, I'm going to keep them in during recess, or I'm going to keep them after school, or we're going to meet during homeroom time, and we're going to go through this piece to make sure that they really understand it. And then how will they be able to show you that? You're going to have them make corrections on their test. How are they going to be able to show you that they've learned? Okay? So that's kind of the main things they want to know. That reflection piece that we keep hammering home all the time is a big part of the TPA. They want to know what you're going to do next. So that's kind of the big picture. So there we go, the components. They show you one of the rubrics. The rubrics are in your handbook after each of the tasks. This is what the scorers use, is that exact same rubric. So we're going to encourage you to look at level 3. This is where your goal is. I would strongly encourage you to aim for a 4. Simply because they have now set a national cut level. The recommended level nationally is a score of 42. And Minnesota is going to be naming theirs very shortly here. And some other states already have. One of the student teachers is down in Iowa. And interestingly enough, Iowa has actually listed different levels for different content areas. Why, I'm not quite sure. But for this student, he's PE, and Iowa's cut level is a 41, and I've been in contact with their head of their BOT there, and they've said if he gets a 41 on our TPA, because it's scored nationally, he can use that for licensure there. So again, think about that as you're doing your TPA, and who knows where you'll land someday. I was born in Nebraska. Who knew I was going to end up here in Minnesota? My parents were crazy. They moved north. But, you know, it happens. That people end up someplace they never ever imagined, and now you want your license to go somewhere else, and this is a national thing. So very possible that your score on this thing could be used to meet licensure requirements and get you out of a whole lot of tests. So be thinking about that. So we say, look at the 3s. That's where a standard average student teacher should be. Aim for a 4. You can get a couple 2s and it's going to be okay, but we encourage you to really aim in that direction. So those are the 5 components where you're planning, you do your instruction, you do your assessment, you analyze your teaching, take a look at where the academic language is all the way through. So those are the pieces we're looking at. So getting ready. And I know some of you are like already there, you're videotaping, you're set to go. Others, we were talking on the way up the steps. Some of you have only been in your student teaching since like the beginning of September or middle, and you're just really getting going. Depends when your school started. You want to choose which class or content area and topic you're going to use. Elementary, you have a choice between either literacy or math. When we get to the live text part, we'll show you, I've got it loaded in there now. Your assignment for TPA is there. You'll see both. You only do one. It's listed there so that everybody in your section can choose whichever one they want. Okay, so you only pick one. You get to pick which, I'm going to say secondary here, which section do you want to use of what class? Okay, so say you got 3 sections of geometry, you pick one of those. Those are the ones you get your signatures back from parents on that you can videotape and all of that, but it's not every section, it's the one class for those 3 to 5 days. This is really just a snapshot of what you're doing in student teaching. Okay? Make plans for your video camera. We have them here. You can check them out from Carol. We can't mail them back and forth because the mail service is not real nice to them. They won't work by the time you get them. But, you know, if we can make arrangements to get them back and forth. They do have a tripod with all of them, so it is nice. Then they're not, you know, when you're trying to watch them and so on. Funny story, but true. Last semester I had somebody who used his cell phone, an iPhone, to do his videotaping. It takes a great video. Problem is, and I didn't know this either, if you happen to not have it right side up, it took his entire video upside down. And there's no way to do that differently. So that was what he had. Yes, when he looked at it on his phone, if you know your iPhone, what does your iPhone do? If you have the orientation wrong, it flips it for you, right? But when you download it, it doesn't do that, and his entire video was upside down. Nice and crystal clear, they could see him, but he was on his head the entire time. So, be careful about little things like that. Yeah. Make plans for your assessment. How will you know what your students have learned? And make sure to do that alignment and that you mark that off on the piece that you upload. That you're showing this meets, you know, Monday's content 1, this meets Tuesday's whatever. So that you just have a little table on there that says this is where it goes. We were supposed to have your voucher codes for registering by like 2 weeks ago. I don't know why they aren't here yet. I have asked and requested, they keep saying they're coming shortly. So, kind of the process, what will happen with this? You will please be checking your SMSU email. Got to be in there because that's where I'm going to be sending this, because you each get your own individual code, okay? I will send you your code. When you get the email from me, it'll have some screenshots of directions. But what you'll do is you'll go to a link I give you. It's the Pearson TPA site. You're going to set up your own account there. So make sure you know your username, password. People have really told me that the whole Star ID thing, if you want to use just one, it fits the parameters for what they need. So that might be one to make it easy to remember. You're going to go in and set up an account. When I sent you this voucher code, you're going to use that because that's your payment. You've already paid as part of your tuition here. It's a fee on your tuition. And so you enter that code that shows you've paid. That will set up a placeholder for you so that then they're ready to get your TPA later. If you haven't registered, you can't submit, so you've got to register first. Okay? I had people who just kind of blew off that step last semester. It doesn't work. You got to have registered. After that, when you're ready to go ahead and submit, you're going to go to live text, and I'll actually go show you that now so you can see what that looks like. And you're going to go into your live text, create your TPA portfolio there, separate from your teaching portfolio, and upload all your documents. And I want want you to see, you probably haven't been here to look lately, I want you to see what this looks like, because it's going to be different from what you're used to seeing.